Has the Massachusetts miracle turned into a nightmare? Have overdrawn bank accounts and incorrect projections of revenue income killed the state's credibility on fiscal matters? Why are police being used to collect taxes, or are they? Tonight, a straightforward discussion about the grave financial situation of our state government. Coming up, to tax or not to tax.
The Jerry Williams Show. Explosive issues. Straight talk.
Hello again, New England. Tonight, the debate over taxes in the Bay State heats up, and with us are several key players in the current fiscal fiasco which is being played out on the Hill. As always, your calls will be welcome a little later in the program, but warning, the following program may feature some shocking language and possibly the use of the T word. Sensitive viewers are urged to pick up a phone and call us with your opinion. Well, let's meet our guest now. First, a familiar face, Barbara Anderson, Committee Executive Director of the Citizens for Limited Taxation, and recently called for the resignation of the governor and possible impeachment. And Representative Jack Flood is with us. He's the House Chairman of the Committee on Taxation. Representative Flood has been an integral part of the system. Showing support of possible new taxes is George Keverian, Speaker of the House, who had received some recent criticism since his announcement that he might support an increase in the tax structure. And Senator John Olver is the chairman of the Committee on Taxation, Senate side, and has been known to throw the T word around from time to time. Mr. Speaker, I want to know what happened in the governor's office this afternoon.
It's none of your business, Jerry. Hey, look, we got to settle something here. We're running the government. You run your television show.
What happened?
I'm not telling you. Well, we had a meeting, and it's...
Who did you have a meeting with?
Well, with the...
Was he there? Was the governor there?
No,
was Senator Bozier there?
Senator Bozier was there.
Was Patricia McGovern there?
Yes, she was
there. Was there anybody else there?
Yes, Richie Volk was there.
Richie Volk.
Steve Rosenfeld was there. And
he's chief of staff.
Ed Lashman was there.
I'm still laughing for the last one. Now, what actually took place? Did you come up with anything?
Quite frankly, I mean, I'll tell you what I can tell you, that we have been meeting regularly just about every week, and we discuss, we're trying to find a handle on the problem before we deal with the solution. I think we're getting closer to it. We're trying to get general agreement on what the extent of the problems are.
Well, can't you give us any specifics now? Some real specifics.
I could, Jerry, but I don't think it would serve any purpose. I mean, I didn't tell the press in the State House what we said, and I certainly am going to tell
it looks like
somebody like you.
Yeah. It looks like we're going to get a pay cut. Is that right? The people of the Commonwealth...
No, we got a pay cut.
No,
Jerry,
not you. No, not you. A pay cut at home. We're going to get a pay cut in our salary. Is that true?
We don't know that. We don't know that. It's a possibility. Taxes is one of many options to solve the problem.
Well, this afternoon, Barbara Anderson, one of our eyes on the Hill, tells us what, Barbara? What happened this afternoon? What did the Speaker kill? He's here right now.
Well, it wasn't... actually, the Republicans made an attempt to freeze salaries for employees earning $25,000 or more, which are not unionized.
Freeze salaries.
But it was a resolution that required the cooperation of the leadership to get it on the floor for a vote, I understand, and they weren't able to move. So apparently this means that the House leadership is not yet ready to start to do some of the really dramatic things that are going to be required, I think, to get the situation under control.
What do you say, Representative?
Well, we have 5 weeks left in this year. I mean, I don't know why it's a big rush for this. We've only spent down 47 weeks of the budget. We have 5 weeks left.
Are you a Richie Volk supporter on this no new taxes?
Oh, I think we should have no new taxes. Absolutely.
No new taxes?
No, I don't
Can
think
we make it with no new taxes?
I think in order to pay off the debt from '89, we're going to have to do some of the things Barbara suggested. We're going to have to freeze salaries. We're going to have to start laying off people in state government. I mean, it's a lot of talk about, well, there is waste and we'll cut if we can. We've got to cut. And that's the only way you do it. And it's painful, but it has to be done. Digital equipment just froze the salaries of all their employees.
Why do we keep hearing from various portions of the state legislature, the Speaker, Senator Olver?
I don't think you're hearing much different from the Speaker.
No, I think the Speaker is being...
he's being much more diplomatic than I. I'm a very blunt guy.
But you backed the no new taxes vote budget, did you not, Mr. Speaker?
It didn't get through without me.
That's what I mean. Right, you backed it.
Yeah.
So there you are.
Role in the House.
So why can't we keep it that way? Why can't we keep it that way?
Well, nobody said that we're not going to keep it that way. We don't know yet. What we're talking about are two separate problems here. Fiscal 89 and fiscal 90. The budget that we propose for fiscal 90, Mr. Volk has said, is balanced by the revenues that he has predicted.
Well, do you think it can be done?
He tells me that it can be done. The Mass Taxpayers Association, Mr. Manley, has said that he agrees with the revenue estimates of Mr. Volk. So that's one set of problems.
Well, Jack Flood says it can be done.
Though.
Jack Flood says it can be done. Barbara Anderson says it can be done. The people of the Commonwealth want it to be done. Senator Olver, you never met a tax you didn't like, isn't that true?
Well, there are some taxes that I don't like. You suggested we were going to take a pay cut, and people were going to take a pay cut, and I don't really think that income taxes ought to go up particularly because we already have relatively high income taxes among states. I'd prefer to see broadening of things like sales tax in order to get.
But I mean, it's a tax. You think we're going to have a tax? Is that right?
Yeah, I've said that
sales
right
tax?
from the very beginning.
How about a gas tax?
I think that we cannot do on the amount of money that we have as a gas tax.
How about a liquor tax?
Liquor tax is something that
how about a capital gains tax?
I would be in favor of a capital gain tax, carefully chosen and carefully drafted so that you would not go after the investments
I'm going to ask you all
in Massachusetts.
I'm going to ask you all this question. How did we get to this point? How did we get here? I think here's what I've been hearing on WRKO radio. I hear about water and sewer fees up, automobile insurance up, fines on the road up, thousands of state fees up, gasoline up, taxes and price of gasoline, and the unemployment trust fund up, county deeds excise tax up, inflation, registry fees, tolls up. Mayor Flynn wants a new tax. I mean, people are saying, wait a minute now, hold on here. Enough's enough, Mr. Speaker. That's what they're saying. It's not that they haven't paid so far. They've paid in the last fiscal year through the nose.
But Jerry, in this state, we have also had personal income go up and up and up and up by a faster rate than in any other state in the country.
There's a reason,
It's
John.
gone up by about the same amount as expenditure, as spending has gone up in government in these past few years of this decade.
There's a reason that personal income went up. And we have the highest housing costs in the country. We have the fourth highest auto insurance rates in the country. We have the highest utility costs in the country. I mean, it's very expensive to live here. And the suggestion just because personal income is up means you have more to give to the government is not true. I mean, it's very difficult for the average working person in this state to live and work here because everything is expensive. And the fact of the matter is, it isn't just taxes. It's the taxes is the straw that breaks the camel's back. I mean, if you talk to truckers, I mean, you're talking about fees. Just trucking fees, just to register a truck, has doubled in the last year. And for a guy that's out driving his own rig and doesn't have a lot of money, that's a burden. That's a terrible burden.
Mr. Speaker, why are revenues down? Here I have a federal revenue for the month of April. The unusually large surge in April income tax payments helped produce a record $41.45 billion budget surplus for the feds in April. If we're so big and low unemployment, why didn't that happen here?
I can't tell you why it didn't happen. I can only tell you it didn't happen. And people like myself don't understand all the nuances of our economy. I do know this, that the problem is not just one for Massachusetts. It's one nationally. There's a phenomenon. Something is going on. At the present time, there are 23 states, I'm told by the recent business magazine, that are proposing various amounts of tax increases. Connecticut, I understand, just proposed a $770 million tax increase. This is going on everywhere. Personal income up, revenues down, sales tax revenues especially. So these things have been happening. I don't think it really serves any purpose, Jerry, quite frankly, to spend a great deal of time on why, unless the why can help us solve the problem.
You know, I think, Barbara, you often come up to the point of blaming the governor. This is the why. The legislature was not in session for 3 months. The governor was going around the country saying it was a great miracle.
I think it's important to understand why, if learning how we got into this keeps us from getting into it again if it happens over.
I agree.
And considering that the governor is considering running for president, again, we could go through the whole thing again if we don't clearly understand why it happened. I don't think there's any point in blaming the House at this point for what they did last summer because they're trying to resolve the issue. And as long as they're trying, blaming them doesn't solve the problem. Well, but I think we can blame the governor, who was the problem then, is the problem now, and apparently is going to be the problem for some time into the future.
Here's the question I'm asking the three elected representatives, Representative Keverian, Representative Olver, and Representative Flood, Senator Olver, I should say. Do you not get the message as Ted Koppel once said, Governor, I don't think you get it. Do you get the message from the folks out there that the governor's payroll has no shortfall, according to the Middlesex News? Charles Baker III is on at $1,326 a week. $1,406, his salary's gone up in just a few months. Do you not get the message, what people are saying out there, Senator, Representative Keverian? Do you not hear what they're saying?
No, we hear it, and of course we're out there. We know what people are saying, and we don't support everything that's going on. Barbara's correct that we've been trying to solve the problem. There are many good people that are working very, very hard to resolve this problem. Now, one of the things we talked, the spending obviously is being cut. During the summer, I was under a great deal of pressure, and from you too, Jerry, to bring back the House into session. The reason you wanted us back was so that the members could vote.
The problem, yeah.
Well, no, and members remember those vetoes that people were trying to override. Republicans were working very hard to override certain vetoes, and one of them was in local aid.
And many Democrats too, Mr.
And yeah, but if those vetoes had been overridden, Barbara, there would have been more spending, would there not?
It was just wrong, Mr. Speaker. It was wrong for you to allow the governor to go into our cities and towns and take money.
That's not
Last
the point.
summer,
The
while
point
you
is,
were all
where
supporting
were we going to get that money, Barbara?
Mr. Speaker.
Assume that we had come back, assume that we had overridden those vetoes, and assume that that money had been appropriated. Where would we be, in a better position or a worse
Your House Chairman's been telling us all year exactly where the money can come from.
I think what a lot of us intended when we asked to override the local aid was to make cuts in other areas of the budget to compensate for the increase in local aid. I think a lot of us get the message. I will say for the Speaker, I mean, unless we had leadership such as Speaker, Jack Flood wouldn't exist. I mean, I'm the chairman of a House, and he's allowed me the voice publicly to voice my own views because he knows they're of my conscience, even though they don't always agree with his. But the fact of the matter is, there are a lot of us that have said different things in the House. I've been fighting to cut spending for 3 years. Now, a lot of people in the past have said I'm a naysayer. But I think the reason that history is important is, are you going to follow in our way out of the woods? Are you going to follow the people that got us lost? Or are you going to follow the people that kept saying, if we take this path, we're going to get lost?
If the governor added 10,000 employees, as some people say, why can't we get rid of some employees? This is a time of stress, a time of crisis. The governor thinks it's a challenge, and we think it's a crisis. We're not paying our bills.
Because the 10,000 employees added during this decade were added in some areas that people supported very strongly at the time that they were added. They aren't just the governor's campaign staff. They never were just the governor's campaign staff. They were people that allowed us to collect taxes, which allowed us to give tax cuts and give a lot of local aid and support a whole lot of new programs that were built. They were people that were added in mental health and retardation, people in higher education in a period when we thought it was valuable to make the best, to expend more, to
Senator,
spend more.
Maybe it's time to say no at this particular point. Maybe it's time to say, we've had it, the public, we're way in over our heads, and we've got to lean it all down.
Jerry?
Well, that may well be the case. Well, people were also telling us that we should clean up hazardous waste. They were also telling us that we ought to provide health care for all the citizens of the Commonwealth.
Maybe that has to be put on hold.
By referenda which they themselves adopted. And you have to remember that every one of those expenditure programs, spending programs, was voted by both branches of the legislature.
If you told the people of the Commonwealth that we can't do it, we got a problem, they would understand that some of these programs. Let me break for a moment. We'll come back. It's a taxing situation in the Bay State, and our topic, of course, is taxes, and to tax or not to tax. And our phone calls are at 931-1125, 931-1125. We'll continue in a moment. We're back live on Fox 25. We'll continue with more from our guests on the topic of taxes in the Bay State and what we're about to get. When will this be, Mr. Speaker? When are we going to debate this over in the Senate side? I'm sure you have some clue.
Well, we're waiting on the House side for the Senate to act on the budget, and we hope that they will do that very shortly.
And certainly Patricia McGovern must have told you something about what she has in mind.
No. The Senate never tells us what they have in mind.
Well, do you
the closest I've been to a senator in years.
Senator, will you tell us what's going to happen? What kind of taxes are we going to be confronted with? We know that's coming out of the Senate.
I'll never tell. not until it's released.
There are going to be some taxes. In your view, will there be some taxes?
Well, basically, we're not able to raise taxes until they originate. New taxes have to originate in the House of Representatives.
You know, there's a lawsuit on the amount of fees and fines as well, contending that they are all unconstitutional under Article 23 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. The House gave up its right to hold on to the process of making fees, and now the governor is using them as a tax measure.
That's what you say?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we've taken the right back, I think, in this...
Not yet.
Well, in this budget proposal, we must approve.
Yeah, that came about as a result of Representative Blute of Shrewsbury. He's a Republican who wanted to take it back in one version of the House budget.
Well, I didn't know he could do things by himself. I thought the House did that.
Well, I think you gavelled it, and that means
whatever.
yes, all right, but he proposed it. Isn't that true?
Yeah, he's very, very bright. He sees on an issue, and he managed to catch the legislature at the time when we all agreed.
Barbara, you're the only civilian here, so can you tell us what they're going to do? I mean, they won't tell me what they're about to do. You tell me what they're about to do.
I really don't know what they're about to do. Normally I can figure out what they're about to do by kind of trying to figure out the plot, but I don't think they know what they're about to do yet, and therefore it's hard for me to determine what that is.
I can suggest to you what I'll do, and it's basically it'll be the same as what I've done in the past, and I fought for cuts. John Olver mentioned whether or not you can make cuts. I've suggested and filed legislation in the past to consolidate police functions on the state level, to eliminate the MDC, and to make a lot of personnel cuts in the area of public relations in deputy secretaries and the like. And until that's done, I'm not going to support that.
Isn't it time for a reform Democratic candidate? Somebody who's going to say we can consolidate, we're going to deal with worthless programs, get rid of them, we're going to review everything. We're going to put universal health care on hold for a while because we can't afford it. We simply can't afford it.
I think it's time for a reform Democratic and a reform Republican candidate. I'm always for reform candidates in there. And indeed, we can do all of those things. The problem is you can't do them suddenly and do them responsibly.
I'd like to take a few calls before we wind up this half. We have another set of guests coming up in the second half. Let's take some calls at 931-1125. Hello.
Hello, Jerry.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, just two quick points, and I'm in a hurry. One thing is, I think you can blame a lot of what's going on in the state on two things. One, when you have a one-party system, things like this happen. You don't have checks and balances, and the Democrats run rampant. And secondly, I blame ourselves, the citizens of the state, for electing people like Governor Dukakis, who really has no business running the state. He's been totally incompetent, and you would probably agree that he should probably step down instead of...
Well, I might agree, but let's find out from the speaker about this business of... not the governor particularly, we won't make it personal at all, but what the gentleman just said about not getting the word. You folks that just don't hear us out here.
That's not true. We hear you. We hear you very clearly. And we work very hard at it. But it's one thing to criticize. You know, it's very easy to criticize everybody else. And it's very hard to produce programs and plans that will actually solve the problem. We're working very hard at that. There are people, as I said, that are very dedicated to good government, to balancing this budget, to listening to people's complaints, and to try to restructure all of state government in response to what the realities are. This has been a good exercise, Jerry, for all of us. We've looked at line items in a way that we've never looked at them before. And, John, I think you'll agree. And, Jack.
A listener this afternoon called me and said something like this. I'm not sure it's factually true or not, but they're building a recreation park at Concord State Reformatory. $1.6 million. And you see, that's the kind of thing that can be put aside, and we can wait. I mean, there must be some things we can wait on, including universal health care, until the future, Mr. Speaker.
Well, let me just say to Jerry, it's very difficult for us to respond, we as legislators, to individual examples here or there, which even we would agree with you ought to be placed on hold, ought not to be hired, campaign workers better off if they were in the private sector. It makes our job much more difficult. I agree. But this is not the major problem. We're talking about large amounts of money. We're talking about major
Has the state budget gone up by itself? It's $500 million more than it was last year? I mean, it's not like they're cutting the thing to the bone.
And some people characterize the budget as mean. The budget has gone up $600 million from last year's budget. The budget the House proposed. So it's not a mean budget. But just
the governor wants it up another 10%, doesn't he? He wants to expand the state budget.
There are other ways of handling things besides spending more money. And one of the things that bothers me about the debate is that people that suggest other ways in other directions are called critics. because apparently the only leaders are in
You're
this
a basher.
administration.
That's what you
no,
are.
No, I'm
You're
not.
a
I think I'm trying to
mean-spirited
lead
basher.
the state in a different direction. And I'd just like that benefit to suggest that I'm not just merely criticizing the government. I've offered ways, such as consolidation of police, elimination of the MDC, to lead the state in a different direction. So people like Barbara Annis and myself aren't merely critics. I think a lot of us have offered positive solutions to the problems of the
All right,
state.
let's take another call, please, at 931-1125. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
How are you?
Fine.
I'd like to ask why, when most politicians talk about cutting services, the first thing they mention is schools, police, and fire. And the most important things that they know will go right to the voters' heart.
Yeah, Senator Olver, you know that. We've heard they're going to release prisoners, they're going to let them out on the street to ravage poor souls, that the state troopers are not going to get overtime so we can't investigate all those murders down in New Bedford. I mean, that's not fair, is it?
No,
That's not fair.
No, but on the other hand, you just made a comment about a recreational facility at Concord. Everybody understands that we have the most crowded correctional system. People want people to be put in jail for serious crimes. If we have that tough correctional system, that overcrowded system, then the chances of us having the kind of riots that have occurred in other places are higher here than in other places. It may well be that it's the best kind of an expenditure we could make, that recreational facility at an overcrowded correctional system. I don't even know that that's in the budget.
Well,
I don't know it, but it might well be the best
I think what most people see now is
that
that these fees, fines, and taxes going up are forever. These are not. That's why the debate is so spirited, that they are forever. We're not taking a temporary surcharge here. This is a forever debate.
But the cost of things go up all the time. The caller who just commented about the matter of laying off police and firemen. Well, the problem is that there is no additional local aid going into the budget as it was passed by the House a couple of months ago. It was one of the trade-offs they had to make in trying to come up with a no-tax budget. They had to make cuts.
Well, wasn't that the spirit of 2.5 in the first place, to transfer some of the problems of the real estate tax, which was a dominant tax in the community, to the state, whereby they had plenty of access to taxes and return the money to cities and towns?
Of course it was, and that's exactly what happened. Barbara, I think,
That's a good move.
would tell you that Proposition 2.5 would have been a disaster without state aid. I hope you agree that that's so.
Well, we thought it would until last year when you all took $91 million in the cities and towns and they didn't complain. Now we support Chairman Volk in level funding this year because we feel the cities and towns can handle it. But I hope next year you can get back on track with sharing with the cities and towns.
But if we do, that means spending more money, doesn't it? We can't. You have threatened us, Barbara, with having a lid on state taxes. So we have a lid on state taxes on the one hand.
If you had a lid before, Mr. Speaker, we wouldn't be in this mess now.
We continue to raise money to send money back to cities and towns. They're limited by 2.5. We're limited by constitutional amendment. And what's the answer?
Mr. Speaker and Senator Olver, if a new tax comes about and the people from Citizens for Limited Taxation go with an initiative, they could be wiped out in a year and a half.
They could be
wiped out, and is there a plan to wipe the Citizens for Limited Taxation out in front so they can't do that?
No, there's no way of wiping them out. They have to take their issue to the people, as surely Barbara is going to do. If the people, when we finally come up with a proposal here, are not willing to pay for additional taxes for health care or Medicaid or education or whatever it happens to be, then she'll win it on the ballot.
I think, again, that people are not going to want to do that because they feel the state has been badly mismanaged. They've been lied to during the campaign, not from you or the speaker, but from the governor, and that all things were put on hold because he might have become president of the United States.
It's easy to bash Governor Dukakis. Really, very easy. But the other states, as Speaker Keverian has already said, there are other states, New Jersey with a Republican governor who wasn't running for president, New York with a Democratic governor who wasn't running for president, Connecticut with a Democratic governor who wasn't running for president, California with a Republican governor wasn't running for president.
I think
they all have the same problem, and all of them even worse than we have.
I think a lot of people would have stood still for an off-track betting concept here in Massachusetts. When I handed that to the governor, a study of what took place in New York, he just handed it back to me. I want to take another call, by the way. Let's continue. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine. The state of our health is fine. Let's get on to the question.
Okay, excuse me. This question has nothing to do with what was just being talked about with Proposition 2.5. This is directed at the speaker. I'd like to know what happened to 4 or 5 years ago. We had X amount of dollars in excess. What happened to all that cash?
What happened to the surplus is what he's asking, Mr. Speaker.
Well, we cut taxes. We cut taxes and we increased local aid, and surpluses went to cities and towns and went back to the people by reduced taxation. That's what happened. We're not hiding any money anywhere.
All right, next caller, please. Hello.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air with our panel, all right?
Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Jerry, I just want to say this. I'm calling from Everett, and I'd like to ask a question to everybody that's there. Is this not a critical situation, or what?
Is this critical? Jack Flood, this is your last time around, Jack.
Oh,
We're going to have some more people.
Yeah, you call it a challenger crisis.
No, is it critical? Is it critical? We're not paying nursing homes. We have Medicaid on hold. Is it critical?
Yes, we have to restructure government and the way we do business. Yeah, absolutely.
You still think we can make it on a no-tax budget?
I think we can. Yeah, if we make the resolve to cut the bureaucrats in consolidated agencies, the money we free up from that can be used to pay off some of those other debts.
Senator, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's a critical situation. Critical. We can cut some agencies. We can consolidate some agencies. We can streamline those agencies. But when you get done doing all that, you find very little in the way of saving
involved in those items. You do get that message, isn't that true? You hear it from people.
The total amount you can save from that is very small compared with the commitments that we've made and that people by referendum in this state have said they wanted, like health care for all, like hazardous waste control and things of that sort, and we've got to continue to do those things.
Barbara,
and we should do those things.
Critical?
It's a critical situation. People want the things that Senator Olver is talking about, but they feel that they're already paying $11.5 billion, and that should be enough to cover expenses.
Well, I'll see you tomorrow afternoon with the governors Howie Carr, Barbara Anderson, and me. Mr. Speaker, you have the last word.
The situation is critical, and we are doing everything we can to resolve it, but this is still the greatest state in the Union to live in, and I'm very proud to be a Massachusetts citizen, and I know this problem is going to be resolved.
How is it going to be resolved?
It'll be resolved. Just watch it.
I see, but with another new tax, is that
we'll
it?
See.
I can resolve it with a new tax.
Yeah, I can resolve it if I open my bank account.
Well, we're back in a moment. My thanks to Jack Flood, Barbara Anderson, George Keverian. He's good at times, as they say, and Senator John Olver. Thank you, too. We'll continue in a moment. We have more people coming up on the fiscal crisis and some more key players. We're live on Fox 25. Don't go away. I don't know if there's going to be any laughs, but it's enough for me.